Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm Brianna Hallinan, and this is Sustainable Broomfield. And we are joined tonight by Camille Pollan, who is the Sustainability Manager for the City and County of Broomfield. And she's going to give us a great presentation on what the city has been doing in terms of sustainability, what their plans are, and the major accomplishments that they have had over the past couple of years. And so she's got a nice PowerPoint presentation for us. And Camille, did you say you'd like them to just raise their hand or put something in the chat if they have questions?
Yeah, so we're going to keep it pretty informal. Can you all hear me?
Yep.
All right. Yeah, so just use the raise hand function if you have any questions, and I will interrupt and say hello and answer some questions as we go along. And this is a little girl that's about to get a bath from her daddy.
Yes.
Go upstairs.
And if anybody's not familiar, the raise hand feature is under the reactions button at the bottom of your screen there. So, and if everyone can just mute themselves while she's doing her presentation, unless you have a question, that would be great. And I think we'll go ahead and get started. So Camille, if you want to share your screen.
There's another interested party that's joining on our end.
Oh, another one to say hi. All right.
Yes, so we'll do that. Okay, hi everybody. I'm Camille Pollan. I'm the Community Sustainability Manager for the City and County of Broomfield. My co-host here is Margot, soon to be in the second grade, and she also cares about sustainability. We were out yesterday and she really wanted to go and pick up cans from the ground when we were out because she wants to make sure that we can be nice to the earth. So thank you for having me tonight, and this is going to be kind of a brief overview where we pause for questions, and I'm happy to answer anything that you have a burning desire to know more about. What I'd like to do is just sort of talk to you a little bit about ACES, which is the structure that provides sort of guidance to Broomfield on sustainability issues. And then we'll talk a little bit about the Ghc Reduction Plan, the Zero Waste Plan, and next steps showing where we are at the City of Broomfield in terms of sustainability and ways that you can get involved. For those of you who are not familiar with ACES, it's the Advisory Committee on Environmental Sustainability. And essentially the role of that body is to provide comments and recommendations for improvements on sustainability in Broomfield. And so that group essentially reviews information, has dialogues with staff. There's often subcommittees. They provide recommendations, and it's essentially a forum for citizen comments on environmental issues. Brianna was on the ACES group last year, and so there are cycles that cycle in and out, which means that you all have an opportunity to apply in the future if you're interested. So you can keep an eye out for those announcements. And there are youth positions available as well. Currently, ACES is meeting in person on a monthly basis, but as COVID was raging last year, we spent a lot of time meeting over Zoom, so that is a flexible arrangement. So the City Council priorities currently are sustainability, housing, economic vitality, diversity, equity, access, and inclusion, water, and transportation. So ACES is aligned with City Council priorities. You can see that City Council does prioritize sustainability. It's one of the key components that they have asked staff and boards to focus on in terms of development and implementation of programs. Sustainability lives in the Department of Strategic Initiatives. That's what department I'm in. And so that's kind of a loose umbrella for different topics that sustainability falls under. And so essentially the ACES members are critical stakeholders in our process. We have Augustina on the call here. She's a current ACES member, and so she can tell you all about it, and so can Brianna. If you want to talk to them offline about what it's like being a member and how to apply. But essentially what the members do is they act as liaisons between the community and staff. So they have deliberations and discussions and reach a consensus on guiding the group going forward. So you can kind of think of ACES as this intermediary. This is kind of the graphic representation. And so we have staff and city council that are also involved in those discussions. And anyone in the Broomfield community is welcome to join ACES meetings. Those are public and they're publicly posted. And then all decisions are brought to the city manager's office and the city council. The city council sets the priorities, which I've talked about in the previous slide, and then the city manager's office and the staff figure out how to execute those priorities. So that kind of gets into the nuts and bolts of how we're going to do the things we want to do. So last year, ACES supported the development of 2 long-term strategic plans. One was the greenhouse gas reduction strategy, and one was the zero waste plan. Those were extensive processes that ACES members were deeply involved in. We had 3 subcommittee meetings every month, plus the main body committee. And so we were able to present those plans to City Council in the spring. And the new class of ACES is currently involved in providing input on the implementation of those plans. So I'm going to go through the greenhouse gas emissions reduction plan and talk a little bit about what it encompasses and the history and where we're going. And again, just feel free to raise your hand or chime in if you have any questions, and we can sort of make this conversational. So in 2020, the City Council passed GHG reduction goals, and those were based on reaching reduction percentages from the 2017 measured levels. And so in 2021, as I mentioned, ACES developed the GHG reduction plan, and we presented the findings from that plan to council earlier this year. So that's where we are. We're going to be looking at the milestones that were developed within those plans. The first milestone being in 2025 and then up to 2030. And you can see that the goal is 26% reduction by 2025 and 50% reduction by 2050, and then 90% reduction by 2050. And then if you look on the lower left-hand side of this slide, we also have municipal goals. So for our municipal operations, we have even more aggressive goals. And so that puts us on target for 100% reduction of municipal energy use. That's within city operations by 2020. And we know that by achieving these goals, there are also numerous other benefits that we can achieve that include community well-being, health and safety, economic performance, water and community investment, and a host of other benefits that the community can achieve that are not just purely GHG. And of course, anybody who lived through last summer's poor air quality and what's probably going to be another really bad air quality summer knows that the more we work on these issues regionally, the better outcomes we can have in Colorado. So I'd like to talk briefly about the inventory. So when we looked at the greenhouse gases in the community, we determined that essentially about 36% of our emissions came from transportation. That's not really surprising, being that we are a car-dependent community. And then if you look at residential buildings and commercial buildings combined, that is a huge chunk of our emissions that are essentially from energy. And so the breakdown is sort of on the right-hand side, talking about the greenhouse gas emissions in metric tons of CO2 equivalents. And again, that's 2017 data. However, having this detailed information from 2017 allowed us to target broad strategies having to do with transportation and energy, because that's really what those categories fall into. And it looks like Elise has a question.
Yeah, thanks, Camille. Just a quick question around how is the greenhouse gas emissions calculated? So I know on the EPA website they have a generalized factor for greenhouse gases. So that's something that I've seen before. But does Broomfield or Colorado specifically have a factor that is used?
You mean the emissions factor in the calculations themselves?
Yeah.
Yes, I don't have that data handy, but I know that it was a two-step process. First, we commissioned a study from University of Colorado, Denver, to do an initial analysis for us. And so they came up with roughly these numbers for us. And then we double checked and did a separate analysis with our CU Boulder Master of Environment students, grad students, and they came up with essentially the same calculations. So I know that in both calculations, the emission factors were calculated in there, but I don't know offhand what that was.
Yeah, gotcha. And that could be, for example, like looking at the energy used to energize these residential buildings or commercial buildings and looking at the kilowatt hours and then converting that to greenhouse gases, what that looks like. Okay. I was just curious.
Yeah.
Thank
you. Any other questions? Okay. All right. So it turned out when we started to look at the data that we could achieve 65% of our goals by basically having the good fortune to be in United Territory. So what that means is that because the utilities that service our community are working on grid decarbonization, and because they have such aggressive goals for renewable energy within their own grids, that benefits our GHG reduction plan. So that's great news. A lot of communities do not have that benefit, and they have to pull the weight of that 65% on their own. So what this means is that we only have to concentrate on that other 35%. And what we can do locally. So we want to leverage that acceleration that is being provided to us by the utility, and figure out how we can go even further and focus in on the other high impact actions. And so the other high impact actions that we identified through the analyses were electric vehicle transition, home electrification. That means moving homes to all electric, and energy efficiency. Those are really the biggest impacts that we were able to find. And so if we focus on those areas, that's really where we're going to be able to engage the community the most. And this is what the pathway looks like in order to achieve our goal of 2050. These are the calculations in our software to show how we reach our interim goal of 2030 and then down to 2050. And we broke this out into 3 separate stages, foundational being near term, so things we can do today. Obviously, energy efficiency, we can start pushing that very aggressively. Renewable energy, electric vehicle, and then we have another phase called transformational. And so that's a little bit heavier lift. So it's going to take a little bit longer. Things like commercial building fuel switching or commercial building electrification, and residential fuel switching electrification, micro e-mobility, and then in the long term, we have aspirational elements like all building electrification and transportation electrification. And I'll pause for a question from Nick.
Hi, kind of relating to that last slide a little bit still. I was just curious if Colorado has any kind of regulatory, I guess, space for like cities, municipalities, counties, what have you, being able to like try to procure their own energy. By that I mean like in Massachusetts, I know like they had a bunch of cities basically kind of pass resolutions that they would like to be able to have the option to procure their own energy if they want to. And enough of them got together that they actually got something at the state level passed that let them do that. I was just curious if Colorado had anything like that that had happened here or not.
Yeah, so actually, Fort Collins, for example, has its own utility. I don't know the history of that or the regulatory background that was able to allow that to occur, but it does exist. Whether that regulatory environment exists today to enable a new co-op, I don't know. Clearly having your own utility and setting up your own infrastructure is, a massive lift. And because we, as I said, have this great advantage of being in the Excel territory where they're already moving towards clean energy, we're on a pretty good path.
Cool. Yeah, I was just curious. I'd been wondering about that since I'd seen it. So I was curious if Colorado had something similar or not.
Yeah, and the regulatory body in Colorado is the Public Utilities Commission. And so when issues come before the Public Utility Commission, residents do have the ability to influence that. They do have the ability to come testify, to participate in coalitions that try to influence the outcome of that. And so a lot of this grid decarbonization was from, frankly, the market. A lot of these old gas-fired power plants just getting old, and some of it was pushed by the Public Utility Commission.
Yeah, because they just got them to shut down the Comanche 3 facility sooner than they were planning to. A lot of that from public comment and stuff. So I'm glad at least it works a little bit, even though they're going as slow as they possibly can on the matter.
Exactly. And, and Colorado, as I mentioned, is actually in a good spot. There's other states that aren't as progressive in this area. So it takes a lot more effort to get those public advocacy efforts off the ground.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Okay, great question. So I'm going to send this presentation to Brianna, and it will provide you with the link to the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Plan. You can just download it and have a read. Hope you cozy up and under a shady tree with a beer or something. It's about 85 pages, so it's long. But we also have executive summaries that provide a short overview as well. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about zero waste now. And so if you look on the right, there's a hierarchy of zero waste. And so a lot of us have been thinking about these terms, reuse, recycle, renew. But then there's also elements that we can go beyond that, like redesign and rethink. And so we're sort of starting to approach this hierarchy. And, to be honest, the United States is not very advanced as a whole in these streamlined efforts. And so some of these issues are being resolved by the market. Some are being addressed through regulation. And so the zero waste efforts in Broomfield and within the ACES have been reviewed. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about what we came up with. So here's the timeline for zero waste. The City Council passed a resolution in 2020 adopting zero waste as the guiding principle. So the goal was 50% diversion. So for those of you not familiar with that term, diversion means the amount of waste not going to the landfill. So 50% diversion by 2025 and 100% diversion by 2035. And we had, in 2021, we received a grant from CDPHE to hire a subcontractor to help us to write the plan. And so we worked with ACES on developing the zero waste plan and presented that to council in 2022. And so we're looking forward to our first milestone, which is frankly just around the corner in 2025. So this is These are the 14 zero waste initiatives that were evaluated and prioritized within those plans. And they're sort of broken out into different categories. We have policies, programs, and infrastructure. And if all of those are implemented, we not only achieve the diversion rate that we're looking for, but we also achieve significant GHG reductions. And so it would be the equivalent of about 8,200 passenger vehicles driven for 1 year, or 4,500 homes energy use for 1 year. And a lot of times these equivalencies are helpful in imagining the impact, but we also know if we don't do these things, we're gonna have to pay a lot more money to figure out how to landfill all this junk that we're trying to throw away. And so cumulatively, the highest impacts from that list I showed you on the previous slide, we were able to calculate the impacts in tons and in carbon emissions. And so we have things like construction, deconstruction, and demolition diversion. And that means, for example, if you're renovating your home, what do you do with that construction waste or on new construction? Community recycling ordinance, outreach and education, universal collection, that's a single hauler proposal, and technical assistance. So each of those would help us achieve a certain percentage of our tonnage diversion. And so that's those are our highest priority areas that we're going to focus on. Brianna.
Yeah, Nick, did you still have your hand raised?
If I did, it's unintentional. There we go. Sorry.
Okay, and I had a question, Camille, about the Colorado legislature just passed the producer responsibility bill. Do you know if do you anticipate that that's going to help with our zero waste goals, like achieving them faster because of what that achieved?
Absolutely. Yeah. So anything the state can do to buttress and accelerate our efforts really can only mean that we will have an easier time reaching our goals. So, we have within policy, we have carrots and sticks, right? And so whatever, how some of those policies come from the state and some come from the local government. So we know that producer responsibility is really going to give us a boost and make some of these things easier to adopt and easier to comply with at the local level.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, great question. And then, if you look at the chart on the right, you see the GHG reduction potential, and they match up pretty well, but then you also see the addition of food waste prevention campaign. So that's something that will have a pretty big impact on greenhouse gases. So currently we're at about 28% diversion in Broomfield. And so if you stack up these components, these priority elements, you can see that education and stewardship would get us about 12% more. Structural changes would get us about 29% more. And the other policies in the recommendations would get us about 9% more. So there's still about 22% that are in the hard to divert category. And you can think of things like used diapers, right? There's not an easy solution for things like that. There's not a secondary market. And so there's a whole host of other items like that, potentially by 2035, there will be market solutions or technological solutions that will help us address those issues. And again, you'll receive a copy of this. Here's the link so you can download the zero waste plan. It's not quite as long as the GHG plan. I think it's somewhere around 50 pages, but it's a pretty brisk read, and it goes through all the policies in detail. So just to take you through where we've been and where we're going, I talked about ACEs. They finalized the recommendations and the calculations. We had our study sessions at City Council. Currently, we are in the public comment period for those recommendations, and I'm going to provide you with instructions on the next slides on how to participate in those public comments. And those reports right now are considered to be draft because we're in the comment period, and so they will be finalized. And then we'll start drafting policies and programs, and that's really what ACE's role is going to be, figuring out how the nuts and bolts of getting these programs and policies out into the streets in the next few years, rolling out into that three-phased process that I mentioned. And City Council has to adopt each individual policy as we go along. So the first thing that you can do is stay engaged with our department. And this is the QR code where you'll have this link. You can just download the link for the sustainability newsletter. You'll get monthly information from us. And this is the one that's going to be critical for your feedback. This is taking you to a sustainability hub website on the Broomfield Voice. And you can click on that, and it'll allow you to provide your feedback and comments on the GHG plan and the zero waste plan. And you can disseminate that link widely through your network so that we can get as much input as we can. We want to hear from people who aren't just, we don't just want to hear from people that are supportive. We want to hear from people who are, have questions or challenges with this, and that gather enough substantive feedback that we can go back to council and say we've listened to the community. Augustina.
Camille, is there a deadline by which people should think about submitting their feedback by? I know we were looking at June, but I believe it might have been extended.
Yes, it's extended. So probably my guess is we'll keep that open through July. The other thing that you can do to help us out or to spread the word is that we're looking for a fellow. So we would like a full-time 11-month fellow that can come join our team. This would ideally be someone who's fresh out of college or early career wanting to work in sustainability. We are adding to our team. This is through the AmeriCorps program in Colorado. And so I'll be sending you these links so you can spread the word. This is essentially a way that somebody can gain some really great career experience and help us build out these exciting programs as they roll out into the community. And that's it for tonight. And I'm open for more questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Camille. So does anybody have any other questions for Camille about this or anything else related to sustainability in Broomfield?
I would actually love to ask her more about that fellowship you just mentioned, but we can talk about that separately as a different conversation if you'd like.
Yeah, I'm happy to chat about it. If anyone is familiar with the AmeriCorps program, it's a great program that provides benefits and support to young people that are kind of looking to get experience either in the nonprofit or government sector. And so the position that we're looking for is actually somebody that is going to be communications focused. So they're going to help us with developing and disseminating communications campaigns. So, probably someone that's much more savvy about social media than me, which describes most younger people. So that's a good starting point.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I was wondering if you could speak to, Broomfield has put this plan together. How does that compare to other Front Range communities? How are we doing, side by side with Denver and then Colorado in general? Just for people to kind of gain an understanding of where we at, where other states at, where other communities at, and where do we need to get to?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think that one of the things about Colorado is that there are so many local governments that are engaged in this effort. I'm part of a group called Colorado Communities for Climate Action, which is about 40 cities that have staff people like myself that are working on these issues. That's an incredible number for one state. And so when you think about how those staff members are also engaged with their local elected representatives, city council members, et cetera, and resident bodies like ACEs, that's a very powerful coalition. So within that network, there's a lot of learning and collaboration and sharing of best practices. So we can pick up the phone and chat with somebody in Erie or Superior or Aspen or Grand Junction and talk about what's happening, which means that that basically everyone gets to benefit from our collective knowledge. So I would say that Colorado is doing quite well in GHG planning. We're also doing really well in statewide organized approach. So that's something that that allows us to go to our constituents and say, well, we can do it because Fort Collins did it or Golden did it. You know, it's very easy to point to New York and Los Angeles and Seattle and talk about these incredible things they're doing. But if you can show that it's happening in your state with communities that are similar size, similar political profile, similar socioeconomics, that carries a lot of weight. I'll also say that that places like Denver and Boulder, they have special funds that support their sustainability efforts. We are not at that point yet, but you know, $40 million in Denver is a lot of money to support sustainability, right? So they can do amazing things. So what that does, of course, is it can inspire action in its neighbors, and it can inspire a lot of collaboration. So for example, Broomfield may not need to do a whole energy efficiency workforce development program, right? We might be able to just say, well, let's just collaborate with Boulder and Denver because they're right there. And we can use regional workforce to support our weatherization efforts. So there's a lot of 2 + 2 = 5 going on here.
Sounds like we're on the right path, at least.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, and the things that you all are doing at the neighborhood level and at the nonprofit grassroots level, that's really critical as well. You know, the organization that you're all involved with can really play a role in this effort as well, especially as we start to roll out these initiatives. You know, you can ask the hard questions of us and say, you know, have you thought about this? Is this, you know, is this really, does this incorporate these other elements that you may not have thought about? But then you can also help inspire neighbors and bring together partners that we may not know about to help disseminate these programs and the information.
Awesome. Well, we want to be of service. So we definitely have people who are like, I want to volunteer, tell me what to do. And I'm like, oh, we need an opportunity to have people go knock on doors or something.
Yes, we will get there, I promise.
Awesome. All right. Does anyone else have any other questions for Camille?
Hi, so my name is Aloy, and I have a 17-month-old. And before he was born, it's my first kid, I was looking into using reusable diapers. Now, you know, just a note, because you mentioned, you know, about generally sustainable Broomfield. If there is any, I don't know, any information or anything, just to, you know, even from like talking to some moms who were interested in using reusable diapers, but I think it was extremely overwhelming. There was COVID time. How can I make it that it's, you know, sustainable, it's clean? Because a lot of people mentioned, oh, you know, my kid got some rash, it was not clean enough. And I think that part of overwhelm while having a kid, if I had a good source, you know, not just a YouTube, but like a good source, local moms who are already doing it, I think it could be more digestible. So just as a side note about that, because diapers are a huge issue. So it's just something that kind of resonated with me.
I know, if only we could potty train him like a dog really quick, you know?
Oh yeah, less work for us as well. Yeah, that could have been amazing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I second that, Eloy. It's the diaper thing. It's it weighs on a sustainable, conscious consumer for sure. And you're right. I mean, the services that are out there are, tend to be, heavily priced or very, very heavy on the workload side, and it doesn't always end up being what you want it to be. So a better solution would be amazing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, the cost was very, very steep for the long run, and we're with one income. So when you can calculate all of that, how incredible it could have been if there was, I don't know, like some local moms were able to just kind of like break it down, make it, oh, these are the few steps. And also this is why, because when you have this solution, it cleans it to a level that is safe for your child. And just like, answer like little questions. I don't know, it's like a Mary Kay thing, just for reusable diapers.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that.
So just as a side note, that's something that I love hearing more about.
Yeah, I don't have a solution to offer you. We're long past diapers, thank goodness. But I did post a link to a group called Women in Sustainability Colorado, and they may have some ideas.
Okay, no, that sounds good. Yeah, no, but thank you so much. I appreciate it.
So yeah, we'll try to include that link in the next email we send out with all the links to all the information that Camille was talking about here. Yeah, and hopefully they could be a possible resource for you, Eloy.
Sounds good. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, before my kid is getting to college and then,
Exactly. They don't need it.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate all the information. Thank you so much.
No problem. Anybody else have any last comments or questions or anything? All right, I think we'll call it a night then. Thank you everyone for coming. We really appreciate seeing you. And we'll hope to see you at our next presentation. So just keep visiting our website, checking it out. We'll post when we have another one planned. Thanks again.
everyone.
Thanks, Camille, for your presentation. It was wonderful.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye, guys.